Hello, fellow book readers. My name is John, and to close out the year of 2024, I would like to talk a little bit about my favorite book characters that I read this year. Not of all time, just the book characters that I read this year. They're not going to be in any particular order, besides for the last one. The last one would be my favorite book character I read this year. So, with that being said, let's get it started. Number 11, I am going to talk about Wendell Bambleby from the Emily Wilde series. He's awesome. He's just this flamboyant, eccentric, charming, sort of dramatic professor of dryadology at Cambridge University. But he doesn't actually do any real work. he fakes doing the work, and then he just kind of says stuff to the students. Of course, they accept it because he'll fake the evidence afterwards. He's awesome, and of course, he can get away with all this because he's a secretly exiled king of the Irish fairy kingdom. And nobody knows this but Emily. Of course, she's the only person who knows this, and he didn't even tell her. She just figured it out. She knows so much about fairies that she was able to put the puzzle pieces together and figure out, Wendell, you're secretly a fae. She didn't know he was, a king, but she knew he was a fae. And it's kind of weird because he's like this cheerful, charming guy who he dresses really nice, and he has all these decorations up in his house, and wherever he goes, he brings servants with him to do the work for him because he certainly isn't going out and hiking around and finding stuff. But whenever trouble happens with fairies, he'll step in and he'll take out a flaming sword and he'll kill them, and he's just this brutal fae. But then he goes he turns back into charming jokester Wendell Bambleby, and it's like nothing ever happened, and it's like, wow. And that's just kind of how the Fae are in this world, but it's perfect, and he's such a good character. And hey, he'll go out and kill some Fae, and then just have a bunch of tea and listen to music and sing and have these decorations up. And he's not doing it in an evil way. It's not evil to him. He's just he's doing it to save people, and he's just a normal good guy. And stuff grosses him out. He's perfect. I genuinely think he's one of the better characters I've read this year. At number 10, we're going to talk about one more Emily Wilde character. His name is Poe. He is this little fairy, and he lives in a tree. He lives in a tree in this Nordic Ireland that's just filled with snow, and the most dangerous fae live there. But he's one of the little ones. He's a fairy, so he kind of hates the fae. He's terrified of them. And he lives in this tree, and he's Emily befriends him, but he's so mean, and he's so sarcastic. He's super witty, but he's also kind. He trades Emily for a jacket, and then he gives her bread. And whenever she comes back to the tree, he'll always give her bread now because she gave him a jacket. And Wendell fixes his tree at one point, and he's super proud of it. So he has to protect this tree forever now. He gives Emily this key at one point, and this key lets her go back and forth between his world, I guess. And she's like, "How does this work? What just happened?" He's like, "I gave you the key. What are you talking about?" He's just like, "You an idiot?" He's like, "Mortals, stupid mortals." He's hilarious, and I love side characters like that. And he is a side character. He's not a main character, but he's perfect. Right, at number 9, let's talk a little bit about Count Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Yeah, there's not much to say about this character. He transcends time. I mean, the book was written 130 years ago almost. And Count Dracula is as popular and iconic as ever. Vampires are what they are because of Count Dracula. He set the stage for the traits that vampires would have. Oh, you can't see them in mirrors. They can turn into bats. All these traits were originated because of Count Dracula, right? And the first act with him and Jonathan Harker, where he's just this creepy old guy, and you don't know he's evil yet. I mean, you kind of do because of the title of the book, but you don't fully know it yet. And it's just perfect. The secrets he has, and the way he talks, and how much better he thinks he is than everybody. It's yup, I can see it. Anyway, that's Count Dracula. At number 8, we are going to go with the Lady Jessica of Atreides from Dune. course. She is a Bene Gesserit who also happens to love her family. It's kind of weird because the Bene Gesserit, they're mostly just about the Bene Gesserit. They're not really about, the humans and the mortals and their family. And she had a son against the wishes of the Bene Gesserit. They wanted her to have a daughter. She was not supposed to have a son. And then she went and had a son anyway because she loved the Atreides family, and she didn't want to betray them or like kill the kid, I guess. So she had a son. And that's when basically everything goes to disaster, right? Because this Paul Atreides ends up taking down the Bene Gesserit and destroying the Empire, becoming king himself, and it's all because of her, right? If she just didn't have a son, this wouldn't have happened. And she becomes a Reverend Mother on Arrakis, and I think she's a better character than Paul, because with her you can feel the love and the sympathy and the emotion, and with Paul you really can't. Paul's kind of like insert character here, insert main character here. There's not really much to him, in my opinion. But with Lady Jessica, you get everything. She's easy to root for, perfect character, and I love like the kind of how people like think she's a witch because she's a Bene Gesserit. They're not really witches. It's really interesting the powers they have. Love her as a character. She's great. All right, at number 7, we're going to go with Tairn and Andarna. I don't know if I said those names right, but they're the 2 dragons from Fourth Wing. I think it is really hard to do talking animals good. And these 2 are perfect. Like, they did it perfectly. You can root for them super easily. They're easily the most interesting characters in the story, in my opinion. Tairn is just like this grumpy old dragon, and he's sarcastic and kind of mean, and but he's really protective of Violet, right? Like super, super protective, and it's super sweet, but he's just like always correcting her and being like, "Oh, I picked you for a reason, dumbass." And he's super grumpy. He reminds me of Grandpa, really. That's like what he reminds me of a grumpy old grandpa. Perfect character. And then you have Andarna, who's like the opposite of him. She's like sweet and kind and I want to say gentle, but she's like bright and nice and cheerful. And then she turns into a teenager in the second book, and she becomes super sassy, and it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Like, the sassiness is just like so right. It's like, yep, that's a teenager right there. That's exactly what it's like. And I love both those characters, and the way they play off each other is perfect. And Darna will say like something super sassy, and Aaron will jump in and be like, "No, you can't do that. What are you talking about?" And she's like, grumpy old man, shut up. But Andarna actually really likes Tairn a lot. But their back and forth when they're talking to Violet is perfect, and I think they're used just the right amount of time. I mean, they're used a lot because they're for all intents and purposes, they're main characters. They are used a lot, but they're not overdone. You don't hear them 24/7 every page, but you do hear them enough, and it's perfect. Love those 2 characters. Great characters. Okay, at number 6, we're going to go with Thorn Bathu from the Shattered Sea trilogy. She is like this peasant girl who becomes a warrior, and she's young too. I don't know how old she is, but she's definitely, a teenager of some sort. I don't know if she's 16, 17, 18. She's something like that. We meet her, and she like, remember if she kills somebody by accident on the beach. She's training, and this master sends her up against 3 different people with like a wooden sword, right? It's total bullshit. He just does not want this girl to be in his army, so he wants her to get beat in this like training fight. And she accidentally stabs somebody because her wooden sword like snaps and it gets like a sharp edge to it. So I think this character dies, if I'm correct. So she's about to be executed, but then Yarvi comes in and saves her, who is he's like the new religious figure in basically that kingdom's priest, right? But he has the real power. He's like more powerful than the king in this world, and he's a teen too. He's like 18 or something. He was the main character in the first book. He saves her, and then he's like, "Well, what can you do?" And she shows him that she can fight, and he has this other girl that he knows train him, who's supposed to be like a witch, but she's not really a witch. Everyone thinks she's a witch, but she's not. But she's an awesome fighter, right? And she trains her how to fight with speed. She's like, you can't be using power. You're not strong. You're a small girl, right? You gotta use your speed. And she learns how to fight properly. She was already a very good warrior, but she becomes a great warrior. And then when they go to the city, she like kills a bunch of people. She fights a bunch of people, and they don't make her like, okay, she's a peasant. Yeah, so she has like peasant qualities, kind of, right? She's not like this well-read, smart, bookly scholar. No. But she has like perfect conversations and dialogue, and the way she thinks is super awesome and interesting. And in the third book, she's out for revenge, and it's such a good story, and she's awesome in it. And yeah, I was a big fan of her character. At number 5, we have Elend Adventurer. He is from the Mistborn series. I don't see this character talked about enough, I don't think. I feel like he's kind of slept on, his character. He's definitely my favorite in the original Mistborn trilogy. He's a nobleman from Gadriel, and as soon as we met him, I knew I was going to like him. He's at this ball, and Vin is looking over this balcony, and he like walks up to it. He's like, "That's my spot. I like to read here." He's just like, "I like to read in this spot," and look down. He's like, "Well, you don't like to talk to people?" He's like, "No, I'm not about talking. I just want to read." And you can tell he's different from all the other noblemen because he's interested in the ska, and he doesn't dress as nice. He's a little disheveled. And then we come to find out he has this own little. Him and his friends have this own little like sort of rebellion going on. It's not a real rebellion. They're not actually rebellion, but they like to read about like literature that was banned by the emperor, and it's just perfect. It's just perfect in the first book, and you quickly find out that he likes Vin, right? You grow to like him, even though we were taught in the beginning that we're not supposed to like noblemen, and you can like be like, no, not all noblemen are the same, and he's a perfect example of why not all noblemen are the same. And then you got the second book where he's like, in my opinion, the second book is really his story, where he becomes king, right? He becomes king at the end of the first book, and in the second book, it's about like his politics, and he's like sticking to what his politics are. Like no, I wrote this constitution. He like basically writes a constitution, right? I wrote this constitution. It's like, well, yeah, but you can get removed from power for this, and for this. Why don't you just change it? You can change it right now. It's like, no. I wrote it like this. That's the way it has to be. He has like principles, and he sticks by them. And the second book's all about politics. It's like, how do you be a good king? What's right to do here and what's wrong to do here, and you get a few different characters debating this. Him and Wendell mainly. Sorry if I butchered that name, but it's perfect. And at the end, he is no longer king because, like I said, he gets impeached basically. Which is kind of funny because he's the one that wrote the Constitution. But yeah, then at the end he dies, but he gets saved. And in the third book, he is the High Emperor now, and he has all these powers, and he's like way more ruthless, and he's ruthless for the right reasons. He learned from his mistakes. Now he wants to prevent the apocalypse, basically. And the stuff he does in the second book, in the third book, is still awesome. He's a little bit stronger of a character, but he doesn't lose the spirit of Elend. That he's still Elend underneath it all. And he has, in this book, in Hero of Ages, he has my second favorite book battle speech ever. It's not ahead of Theoden from The Ride of the Rohirrim and Return of the King. Like, will probably forever be my favorite. But his is great in Hero of Ages. Perfect battle speech. I don't have it on me right now, so I can't exactly read it, but it's perfect, and I encourage anybody to go look that one up if they haven't. Or, actually, you should just read the book if you haven't. If you read the book, you already know it. It's great. Love that speech. Number 4, and this is going to be a dual character thing again. Both from One Dark Window, we got the Nightmare and Elm. And they're two different characters, not the same character. So let's just talk about the Nightmare first. The Nightmare is like this monster that lives in the main character's head. Her name's Elspeth. She got sick, right? And they kill people who get sick in this world, right? If you get sick, you get killed. That's the rules. Seems pretty unfair, but oh well. And unfortunately, her sickness, they hid from the doctors, right? And she seemed to heal. So it's like, oh, everything's fine. But no, not everything's fine. Because she has the power for when she touches these magic cards, which are the magic in this universe, she absorbs their power. So she touched the nightmare card, and now she has the nightmare living in her head. And the nightmare is just this, like, mean, old, sarcastic, angry, but very, very protective character. And you find out as the story goes on that there's more to the nightmare than it appears. Elspeth's dad is kind of like not a very good dad. He's kind of awful. And you do end up feeling bad for him at the end, but for a bit you're like, oh god, this guy's just the worst. And he is. And the nightmare is really like Elspeth's father. Like, he is the one that basically protects her and raised her, and he's perfect. He's perfect character, and Elspeth both hates and loves him. By the end of the series, she just loves him. And it's super, super sad when you have to say goodbye to the nightmare at the end. But great character. Let's talk a little bit about Elm Rowan. He is the second son of the king, and his brother is Hoth Rowan. Hoth Rowan is considered like the prince that everyone wants to be. He's super strong as character, and Elm is just this weak little king who seems to lack responsibility. But in reality, Elm is just somebody who was bullied by his brother his whole life, and he's just trying to do right. He hates his father, he hates his family, he hates what they're doing, killing all these sick children and people, and he's trying to stop the sickness from happening. And in order to do this, he has to collect a deck of cards, and he's doing it behind his brother and his father's back. And the second book, you get Elm's point of view, and he's so sympathetic. Like, you root for him, you grow to root for him, and he's not weak. He appears weak, but he's not, because he can control the scythe card better than his brother can. And he's just this really strong character, but he has a strength that doesn't appear on the outside. You have to know him to know his strength. And I think it's like a perfect story. It's a perfect lesson. Not all strength is easily seen. Some strength is on the inside, and that's Elm. So let's go to the top three. Well, not top three, because again, this isn't in order, but the next three are all Throne of Glass characters. We're going to start with Manon Blackbeak, who is a witch. She's just this perfect witch because you're introduced to her and she's heartless. The first scene, she kills a man, right, and drinks his blood. It's like, she's evil and heartless and crazy. But not really. No, she wants to be heartless, but we're constantly shown throughout that she actually has a heart, and she kind of hates it. Like, that's the story of Manon, right? Like, she hates that she has this heart. Like, she doesn't want it, but it's there, and she hides it, and she says she doesn't have it all the time, but almost every decision she makes is always influenced by it, and she cares about her 13, she cares about Abraxos. Hey, there's that prince, I care about him. Hey, oh, there's these innocent people, I actually care about them. I definitely hate Crotchins. Oh, wait, I am a Crotchin. Shit, I care about you. It's like, yeah, you may actually care about people. And she has this sword called Windcleaver, which is just an awesome name for a sword. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Manon Blackbeak. Next up would be Dorian Havilliard. He is the crown prince of Adarlan. And we're taught that right on like the first page that Adarlan is just like this horrible place, and the king is evil, and this prince cannot be trusted. And then it's like, you meet him like a few pages later, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's nothing like his father. He's actually, you can trust him. He's super nice and kind and sweet, and he's a bit flirty and charming, but it's not like in a bad way. Like, you know, those charming characters who it's actually like they're using it in like sort of an evil way. No. Dorian's just good. There's nothing bad about him at all, and he hates his father. He's constantly rebelling against him, but he doesn't realize what's actually going on with his father yet. And then, as the story goes on, you feel bad for Dorian, and then you get really sad for Dorian when some really tragic stuff happens to people he cares about and him. And then at the end, he has one of the best plot lines, I think, where he's like, am I human? And that's a struggle that people go through in real life, right? It's like, am I like everybody else? And it's It's a really interesting story, and I love that story, and I love him as a character. And he's funny too. He's just he's such a perfect character. Okay, next up and last up, and she is my favorite character of the year, and probably one of my favorite characters I've ever read. I will make a different video on that later, so I'm not going to talk too much about her because I would like to save that for a different video. But it would be Celaena Sardothien, who is the main character of Throne of Glass. She's an assassin, but she's actually also a secret princess slash queen. That story's so good. Like, if you've ever read Shades of Magic, she's kind of like Delilah Bard, except with a heart. And that's like all I ever wanted Delilah Bard to have was a heart. Because it's like, why am I rooting for Delilah Bard? And it's like she doesn't care. She doesn't have a heart. But it's like Celaena Sardothien, yeah, she's like that, except she has a heart. Like, and her heart influences almost every decision she makes in the story. And her mother called her Fireheart growing up. She's such a good character, and she's funny too, and she has like all these hobbies like dancing and singing and candy and horse racing and dogs. She's just like a very relatable character, but at the same time she's not, because she has like this crazy magic and she's a great sword fighter, and she was trained to be an assassin from age 8 to 18, right? It's insane character arc. But also, like, it's really charming and sweet, and I think she's very easy to root for. I know some people think she's a bit loud. I don't. I personally enjoy that about her. So yeah, she's one of my favorite characters I've ever read, and I will get more into that in a different video. But anyway, those are my favorite characters from 2024. Let me know what yours are. I'd love to hear it. Thanks.